Welcome back to the deep dive. We're here to, cut through the noise and get straight to the insights you need. Today, we're plunging into something really vital for businesses everywhere: environmental compliance. Just picture this for a second. A company's got this innovative new chemical, right? Supposed to be greener, safer. But how do they actually prove that? To regulators, to consumers, across different countries, that's the real challenge. And that's where, well, a global benchmark comes in. Our deep dive today is all about biodegradability regulations. We're focusing on one key test, the OECD 301B. We're drawing from excerpts of OECD 301B, navigating global biodegradability compliance for chemicals, plus insights from ECHA, that's the European Chemicals Agency, and the US EPA. So, our mission: to unpack what this OECD 301B test actually is, why it's so crucial for big regulations like the EU's REACH and the US's TSCA, and importantly, how understanding it isn't just about ticking a box. It can be a serious competitive advantage.
Yeah, and what's really fascinating, I think, is how this one kind of technical test, the OECD 301B, can have such a massive impact. It's not just, okay, you passed. It's really about unlocking markets, showing you're environmentally responsible, and honestly, even pushing innovation forward. Getting a handle on this test gives you really crucial insights into global trade, environmental impact, the whole picture.
Okay, so let's unpack this then. What exactly is the OECD 301B test? What's its main job?
Right. So its official name is the CO₂ Evolution Test, and its core purpose basically is to figure out how readily biodegradable an organic compound is. Think of it like a clear signpost for how fast something breaks down naturally, under good conditions.
Okay, co-year evolution. So how does it actually track that breakdown? What's the main thing it measures, and what are the key characteristics?
Well, the test, it measures the carbon dioxide, the CO that gets produced over a 28-day period.
Yeah.
The CO is basically what the microorganisms breathe out as they munch on the test substance. And this happens in an aerobic aqueous environment, so basically in water with plenty of oxygen, like you'd find in a pond or river.
Right, got it. And the time frame.
It runs for 28 days. And the pass mark is pretty specific. You need at least 60% of the theoretical maximum CO, the THCO, to be released. And crucially, that has to happen within a 10-day window during those 28 days.
A 10-day window. Okay.
Exactly. The microorganisms they call it the inoculum. It's like the starter culture, usually come from activated sludge, from wastewater treatment, or maybe surface water, or even soil, places with lots of different microbes. And it works best for compounds that dissolve in water and aren't too volatile, meaning they don't easily evaporate.
That 60% in 10 days, it sounds quite strict. So let me ask, what if a substance just misses that? Like it gets 58%. Is it immediately just, non-biodegradable, or is it more nuanced?
That's a really good question. So missing the 60% mark means it doesn't pass as readily biodegradable, according to the specific test 301B, but it doesn't automatically mean it's bad for the environment or can't be sold, not at all. What usually happens is it triggers the need for more tests, often more complex, generally more expensive degradation studies. These might look at inherent biodegradability or persistence over longer timescales, maybe under different conditions. So yeah, missing 301B isn't necessarily a dead end, but it definitely makes things more complicated and costly.
Right, so passing is clearly a huge advantage. Let's talk about how this single test impacts getting into markets. Thinking about those big regulatory systems, maybe start with the EU, with REACH.
Okay, REACH. Yeah, that's the EU's big one. Registration, evaluation, authorization, and restriction of chemicals. It demands a lot of data on environmental behavior. And OECD 301B is, well, highly relevant there, especially for substances made or imported at 10 tons per year or more. That's laid out in Annex 8 of REACH. The results feed directly into chemical safety assessments, environmental classifications. It affects labeling, risk management, the whole 9 yards. And connecting this to the bigger picture, like you said, a pass on OECD 301B often means you don't need to do those further, more complex degradation studies. That speeds up the whole REACH registration process quite a bit. And critically, it really boosts your credibility with regulators and customers. ECK guidance actually points this out.
That sounds like a massive time saver in the EU. But are there any common pitfalls, maybe hidden costs companies face even if they do pass the 301B test for REACH? I mean, REACH requires a ton of data beyond just biodegradability, right?
Absolutely. Even with a clean 301B pass, you still need that whole comprehensive data set for REACH. Human health effects, ecotoxicity, physical chemical properties. It's extensive. So a pitfall isn't the 301B itself, but maybe assuming it's the only major hurdle cleared. It's just one piece, albeit an important one. Another potential issue is data consistency. If you use different labs, you need to ensure the quality is super high and consistent because our REACH is very demanding on data quality. So yes, 301B helps a lot, accelerates things, but but it's definitely part of a much bigger, more complex regulatory puzzle in the EU.
Okay, that makes sense. A big piece, but still a piece. Now let's hop across the Atlantic. What about the U.S.? We've got the Toxic Substances Control Act, TSCA, run by the EPA. Now, TSCA is often seen as maybe less prescriptive than REACH, but it still demands environmental risk data. So how does OECD 301B fit into the TSCA picture? And why does the EPA accept it?
Right, TSCA. So for new chemicals under TSCA, companies submit what's called a pre-manufacture notice, or PMN. And OECD 301B data is often included right there in the PMN. It directly helps the EPA assess the environmental fate and safety of the new substance. The EPA readily accepts OECD test methods, including 301B, because they're internationally recognized standards. They're scientifically validated, developed by consensus. It saves the EPA having to validate everything themselves, you see.
Standardized.
Exactly. And the practical benefit for companies is huge. Submitting good OECD 301B data can really speed up the EPA's review time for that PMN, and often it means the EPA won't require additional, potentially very expensive environmental fate testing. The EPA's new chemicals program guidance highlights this. This isn't just about checking a box. For some companies, especially those with innovative greener chemicals, passing 301B is literally the key that unlocks global markets. Without it, they might face years of extra testing and delays.
You mentioned the EU and US, obviously huge markets, but what about other places? Are there regions, maybe emerging economies, where 301B isn't the go-to standard, or where companies might hit different kinds of roadblocks for biodegradability?
That's a relevant point. While OECD 301B is, very widely accepted, especially in developed economies, it's not universally the only standard everywhere. Some regions, perhaps in parts of Asia or South America, might have their own national standards. Often these are harmonized with OECD guidelines, but there could be slight differences. Or they might require testing in specific locally accredited labs. Sometimes for certain niche products or environmental conditions, they might prioritize different kinds of degradation data that 301B doesn't directly cover. So the bottom line is, while 301B gives you a really strong, often essential foundation globally, it's always smart to double-check the specific nuances for any new market you're entering.
Good advice. So clearly, this test is more than just a hoop to jump through. It's a potential regulatory advantage, and it ties into a company's sustainability story. How can manufacturers really leverage it strategically? Not just see it as a cost, but as an asset.
Okay, strategy. It really starts with a good plan, almost like a checklist. First, partner with the right lab. Needs to be certified, GLP compliant. That's good laboratory practice, ensuring data quality and reliability. And critically, make sure they have solid experience specifically with OECD methods, ideally 301B itself. Second, you absolutely need to confirm test suitability early on. Is your substance actually appropriate for 301B? Is it soluble enough? Not too volatile. Get that clear upfront. Third, documentation. Prepare it meticulously. Use the standard tools. IUCLID software is key for REACH, and EPA's CHEMBU is important for TSCA data submission. But maybe the most strategic point is timing. Integrate this testing early in your product development cycle. Don't wait until the last minute.
Why is that early integration so important?
Because it avoids nasty surprises and delays later on. If you find out late that your promising new chemical doesn't pass 301B, you might need to reformulate or conduct lengthy alternative tests, derailing your launch. Think about what getting to market faster means. For a new chemical, hitting the market even, say, 3 or 6 months ahead of a competitor because your compliance was smooth, that can mean millions in revenue and market share. It's not just saving hassle, it's a real strategic edge.
Okay, a clear strategic edge. But even with the best strategy, technical tests can hit snags. What are some common obstacles people run into with OECD 301B? It sounds precise, not just a simple mix and see kind of test.
Oh, you're absolutely right. It's definitely not mix and see. It requires precision. And yes, obstacles do pop up. It's a bit like baking, You can have the best recipe, but if your oven's off, or an ingredient isn't quite right, the result suffers. Microbial tests rely heavily on the conditions and the ingredients. So, common problems. Low solubility is a big one. If the substance doesn't dissolve well in the test water, the microbes can't easily access it to break it down. Another issue can be the substance itself being toxic to the microbes. If it harms the little guys doing the work, you might get a false negative. It looks like it's not degrading, but really the microbes were just inhibited. And then there's inoculum variation. The mix of microbes you start with can vary slightly batch to batch or lab to lab, potentially leading to inconsistent results if you're not careful. So yeah, this naturally raises the question, how do you actually tackle these challenges?
Exactly. If you hit one of these roadblocks, low solubility, toxicity, what are the workarounds?
Thankfully, there are solutions. For low solubility, you can sometimes use things like dispersants or co-solvents to help the substance mix better with the water. But importantly, these helpers need to be non-toxic and biodegradable themselves so they don't interfere with the test. To deal with potential toxicity, doing a quick pre-screening test for microbial inhibition is really smart. It tells you upfront if your substance might harm the microbes at the planned test concentration. And for inoculum variation, well, consistency is key. Using standardized inoculum sources helps, but also conducting multiple test runs replicates gives you much more robust and reliable data. It helps confirm your results are consistent.
Right, multiple runs for confidence. Okay, so wrapping this up, what does all this really mean for you, the listener, perhaps working in chemicals, R&D, or regulatory affairs? It seems clear that OECD 301B isn't just some technical requirement. It's really a strategic tool, a competitive advantage if used right. It's about being proactive, isn't it?
Absolutely. That's the core message. When manufacturers use this test proactively, think strategically about it, it really empowers them. It helps them navigate complex rules like REACH and TSCA much more smoothly. It cuts down on potentially huge delays and the need for extra costly studies. And maybe just as importantly today, it seriously strengthens their green credentials. It helps prove their environmental claims, which can allow them to enter new markets faster and build trust with consumers and regulators.
Yeah, connecting that to the bigger trends, sustainability, innovation. It really shows how getting deep into the specifics of a regulatory tool like this can actually drive major business goals. It can even help define who leads in the market.
Exactly. I mean, think about it. Adopting early strategic biodegradability testing lets companies lead the way in sustainability while meeting these tough global regulations. It shows there's a clear path where being environmentally responsible and achieving business success really do go hand in hand. They can align beautifully.